So in March, I wasn't feeling so good. Took a pregnancy test and came home, told them that we were pregnant, and we called American Adoptions that night and made the decision that foreseeing what we were what our jobs were and where we lived in terms of logistics and financials, not for lack of love or anything like that. We knew the best thing for him was to find a home that he would have full-time, mom and dad at home and just a safe place to be. And 2-3 months later, we found them. And Stephen said, he saw their video and said, oh, they're the top of the list. And we watched a few more and they just kind of kept staying there. And I really think it was you that you made that first call and he knew. And I wasn't sure. And I think it was just unsure of being in the entire situation in general. But after meeting them that first day, we knew we found the perfect people. If there is such a thing as perfect, they're pretty close. Yeah, they're pretty close.
We were looking for a set of people that were family oriented and resembled a lot of our beliefs to an extent. Not everything, but at the same time, we wanted people that reflected who we are and who we aim to be.
In the beginning, when we were first embarking on our adoption journey, I definitely had very specific ideas of what I was looking for. I knew I wanted someone that reflected us in terms of politically, spiritually. We wanted those things to kind of align with us because we wanted our son to be raised by us as much as he could be. But I did want to close adoption. I thought it would be the easiest thing for him and the easiest thing for me. But I realized, I think, that it would really ultimately was the easiest thing for me, not for him. I think after speaking with Cassie, because she was so insistent, she's like, I want him to know who you are. I think after reading some stories and talking to some people and joining like a birth mom support group, realizing that if we normalize what his family is now and he knows who we are, I think it will bode well for the future and him having a really solid foundation. And I honestly think that with my mom passing away, he was 6 months at the time, when you no longer have your mom, you almost feel like a disconnect from the rest of the world. Like you almost feel like you're floating around somewhere. He won't have to have that because he'll know where I am. He'll know who I am. He'll never have to question it. He'll know where we are. And I think I don't ever want him to feel displaced because that's how not having a parent makes you feel. So I think ultimately, we always say the decisions that we make, we don't really know if they're the right decisions at the time or is this how it was supposed to be, but this had to be how it was supposed to be. And how lucky are we to be able to see all his photos. We see, every day, we document every day with him. We've seen all of his first word, his first steps. As hard as it is sometimes, very grateful. So, yeah. We never planned on having a family. To be honest, we both, I think, understood that our path in life, that was not necessarily for us. And I think I was okay with that. You were okay with that. There was a time where we struggled because we're both, you come from two different places and you have trouble communicating what you want. You know what I mean? So I think in any relationship, we've had our times where things were a struggle and they were tough, but at the end of the day, I think that we've worked really hard to be where we are. And I think that the adoption, I was very worried that it would break our relationship. How many couples survive something like this? But I actually think it kind of brought us closer. So, I think I want Atticus to see that this decision was for everybody, impacted everybody in a really positive way. It was all about him, that no matter what happened between us. I remember my sister-in-law asking me, well, if you guys break up, aren't you going to hate him? And I thought to myself, no, because the decision's not about us. The decision's about the kid. People say, oh, this must be hard. Well, that's the whole point of being a parent. You're meant to shoulder the pain and the heartache and the toughness so he can have as much joy as he needs. And we didn't have that growing up. And he will.
My role in the adoption was to stay resolute in the decisions we had made, at the beginning of our relationship, it's always easy to kind of change and kind of go with the flow versus standing against it and remaining true to what you felt. I mean, you know, her body goes through a lot of changes, and you start feeling the weight of the motherhood. And we had a hard decision to make, and we had to see it through. So my job and my role was to uplift her in every way that I could. Make sure that she understood that I had her back to this whole situation, and that in the end we were doing this in the best interest of our son.
He's been, I mean, incredible. I think that it's been, you know, through the pregnancy, there were a lot of, you question, are you doing the right thing? And even after the paperwork is signed, you still wonder. And there was a lot of back and forth on my behalf, not necessarily his. And so he took a lot of the negativity that was just kind of coming out, like all the stuff I was feeling, all the grief, all the pain, all the loss that was coming to the surface. He kind of just took it and absorbed it. And, you know, it came to a point where, and I think it's very true, that you can't just keep shoveling on somebody. And he finally looked at me and said, you can't think I'm not in pain too. You can't keep blaming me for this. This isn't my fault or my decision. We did this together. And said very well the other day, you know, he said, I'm gonna think I'll be indecisive forever. And he said, it's you and me in this together forever. And that's it. It's about you and me and our son. Our age taught us what we knew would be best for our son. At 20 years old, you know what I mean? I don't know. I still barely have life figured out, but at this point, at least we knew what would have been the best thing for him foundation wise. And we knew in the literal space that we live in, with the work that we do, with the hours that we work, with everything, he would not have had the best, healthiest upbringing. And yes, I could have quit my job. We could have gone on welfare. Well, how far does that go? You know, we wanted a better school system, a safe place. And I think as you get older, those are things you really think about versus just rolling on emotion. You know, at this point, this is the first major decision that I've made solely based on logic and love for another person instead of what's best for me. And I think that was really difficult. I think I grew up a lot in that moment where I realized this was. So I think being older actually gives you a better idea of what is best. And I think people think, oh, well, you're older, you know, you could, you know, just because you're the age you are doesn't put you in a better position to raise a child, but it does give you a certain perspective. I think that's really important. I will never tell someone what to do with their body. Your body is your body. You do what you got to do. But the minute I saw him on there and I saw that it was like a little mango, I go, oh no, we're taking him home with us. And so that was it. And I got back in the car and I said, well, I guess we're having this baby. Told him how far along we were. And everyone was really surprised because my body basically didn't change at all. And then I put on like 20 pounds, like the last month, like it just packed on. And then he was 10 days late, which was really, really comfortable for me. But it was the craziest thing. I'm sad that I found out so late because I think we still would have made the same decision, but I would have had more time with him.
The hospital time for me was pretty good. I worked and then I'd get off work, and she actually was 10 minutes away from my job, so it was even a shorter drive than when I come home. I'd get off work in the morning and be there until a couple hours before I had to go to work. Then I'd come home, get dressed, and go to work until the day of. And that was one of the few times I've called in sick at my job. The nurses were great. We got lucky. The doctors were pretty good.
Yes.
But the nurses were fantastic.
They were so good to all of us. You know, Stephen, he was there. I was in labor for 29 hours and he was not coming. The doctor's like, we're just gonna have to, let's do this. And it took an hour to get the epidural in. But the minute they pulled him out and I heard him, I said, is that our son? And he said, yes. And they gave him to you and you laid him on me. And I remember our anesthesiologist, Tom, I can't remember his name, but he was amazing. He goes, talk to your son. And I remember hearing that. And I remember hearing in my head, the universe, God, whatever you believe in, saying your son is going to be okay. He's going to be fine. You're doing the right thing. I wanted Cassie to be able to be involved as much as possible. Like I said, I think that had she been able to have this own experience for herself, she would have. So I know that she didn't get to do it. I wanted her to be there for it. Before the delivery, only you were allowed to be in there. And then the first hour of skin to skin, it was just us. But as soon as that was done, I had them brought in immediately. And then Stephen put him in their arms, and that was so that photo of them holding him. And it's almost like there's not a huge moment where like, oh, this is the right decision. It's just been these little things that happen kind of along the way, these moments, and you realize, yeah, that fits. Yeah, that makes sense. Like the way they reacted was like, yeah, that's genuine. Like when I see her love on him and hug on him, and he grabs her and hugs her, and when he's cuddling onto Adam, it's just, you see it, you can feel that there. And I think that's why I wanted them to be there, because I also wanted him to know what they smelled like and felt like and sounded like, because he was going to go home with them from the hospital. And, you know, they say, oh, it's traumatic for a baby to be separated. And I don't know exactly what that means, but I do know that babies are attracted to smell and sound. They know their mom. And as much as he knows me, I needed him to know her too.
The process of giving our son up for adoption, placing.
Mm-hmm.
The only real fears I had was I've never done it before, so you're kind of learning on the go. And I enjoyed the way it all came together. I like how we were presented our options. But if I had a fear, it would be that after making a decision on who we would like to place him with, that it would end up being the wrong decision. When we watched the videos, I kind of placed myself in the future of seeing, you know, how these couples that we were presented would be in the future. And, you know, some of them were interesting. They're all great people, all nice people. But, you know,
he had a scale.
I think that in the end, my fears were put to rest when we found the video of Adam and Cassie.
I think that fear subsided for me was when we first met them.
In the beginning, we wanted to close adoption because, in all honesty, we thought it would be much easier for the grieving process, I guess you could call it. But in the end, I feel that Cassie's insistence on having it be open and allowing us to really be a part of their world and their family really has opened my eyes in the past tense, that I'm very happy that we have open adoption versus a closed adoption. It's a blessing to be able to see him grow up, to see a lot of his firsts, mm-hmm. and at the same time have an opportunity to actually be with him and be with them. So I think while it sounds like it would have been easier for a closed adoption, in the end it wasn't.
I agree. I think that, like I said, I think the closed adoption was just easier. I think at that point I might have been feeling a little bit selfish, to be honest. And this would be easiest for me, because having to watch someone else raise my kid, like how do you do that? How do you do that? No one has, I mean, I'm sure there's books written on it, but it's such a personal experience. It's not like I can read like a how-to book and say, oh yeah, that's how you do it. No, everything, and from what I've understood, everything from our experience is so different than a lot of other people. You know, so I thought it would be easier for me and maybe for him, you know, if he didn't know who I was, and just, what a mess I was. You know, I wanted him only to know a good mom. But I think Cassie, when Mother's Day rolled around this year, she goes, I didn't realize that Sunday is like birth Mother's Day. And I go, yeah. And she goes, I don't think that's right. She goes, that doesn't feel good to me. She goes, you're not a birth mom. She goes, you're his mom too. And I think that this way that she's included us and me, I don't know what you and Adam do on the side, but like we text each other and stuff. And I think the way that she's included me and made me feel like I'm still as much his mom as I can be has been a privilege, and I hope that he understands one day that whatever decisions they make for him, we would make the same ones. And I genuinely feel that. And that's why I think that knowing that's why they were the perfect couple for us and for our son, was because they reflected so much of our values. And I know whatever it is that decisions they make for him would be the same that we would if he was here with us.
Advice for men in this situation: you need to be as supportive as possible to your partner. It's not going to be easy at any point, but you have to remain strong and vigilant to your partner's needs, and understand that even though it's hard on you, it's twice as hard on your partner, and that if you are strong enough, you can weather any storm.
I didn't feel any loss during the process until we put him in Cassie's arms and left the hospital. And I cried the whole way home. And I wanted to turn around and take him and run. But I knew that was about me. So I took 8 weeks off of work because it was a C-section, so I had a lot of extra time. There was a lot of crying, there was a lot of tears, a lot of why did you let me do this kind of thing. My arms felt very empty. There was always something missing. I slept with this blanket, I think, for the first 6 months every night.
Still do.
I still do.
The loss is almost unbearable.
I'm so sorry.
It is what it is. It's okay.
But I think that knowing how happy, like again, just what a wonderful family that he has surrounding him and how happy and healthy he is, it makes the loss bearable at that point. And the pain doesn't go away and it doesn't it doesn't become lessened, but it's like with the loss of my mom, you allow yourself time to feel it and move through it. And then you remember that you still have to let life go on. I think that was the hard part, was losing my, I have a hard time saying that because I don't feel like I've really lost him, to be honest with you. We're so much a part of his daily life that I don't feel so much of a loss, but I do feel it.
I don't really feel lost. I'm glad that she said that. I feel more of a guilt.
Yes.
That I wasn't better.
That we weren't good enough for him. And I wonder if that goes
in a
away.
better place for him.
Yes.
Because we're great people.
One of the things that was a huge benefit going through American Adoptions for me was that a lifetime of therapy is provided. I don't go every week or every day. Sometimes it's once every few weeks. Sometimes it's once a month. It's when I feel the need that I need to connect. And so I started going to therapy 4 months before Atticus was born. So it would kind of help me through like the whole process of it all, which is really great. So I stayed with Diane for about a year. But when I lost my mom, I realized that I needed someone a little bit different that could address the grief, because this wasn't not to lessen the loss of a parent, but when you sit in a loss of your child, it becomes so much bigger than you can maybe manage. So I called you and I said, hey, I think I need someone a little bit different. And we put our heads together, and a few weeks later, we found her. But the therapy's been good. Being able to kind of dump my day and kind of sort it and learn how to process things better instead of just freaking out and shutting down. So I think having therapy is so good, having someone outside the storm to see and give you better direction, because when you're in it, you can't see anything, and you're no good to anyone if you're not good to yourself, they say.
This was single-handedly the hardest decision we have ever had to do for ourselves, for him.
I think I want him to know that, understand that adoption is a perfectly wonderful way to make a family, and that sometimes this idea of a parent and 2 kids and a white picket fence, that's not so common anymore. Families are made up in all different types of ways. Everyone's family looks different these days, it seems. It's important for me to know, him to know that this is normal, this is okay, and that his parents are a gift, that we went through hours of videos and interviews and discussions to know, and just to get to know them and make that effort and communicate all the time. We want him to know that this was the most difficult thing we've ever had to do, but would do it again in a heartbeat for him.
Well, as long as Adam and Cassie were in.
As long as it was, well, of
not
course,
sure, but, you know.
of course.